Chapter 1188. While Noah was in action in the royal city, the underground tomb of Nassarik was operating as usual. In a meeting room, Yair Bedard, who was the head of the Guardians, sighed faintly with a listless attitude that she usually didn't have at work. Hearing Yair Bedard's sigh, all the people present stopped their discussion, and more or less showed annoyance on their faces. It was obvious that Yair Bedard had been in this state for a long time. Yair Bedard, are you still not awake? Demiurgos pushed the glasses on his face and sighed as well. As the head of the Guardians, we will not approve of such an attitude when all the Guardians are having a meeting. Taking a closer look, all the Guardians in the underground tomb of Nassarik were gathered except for the Guardians on the 4th and 8th floors. This was a Guardian meeting that would be held almost every once in a while since the management and operation of the underground tomb of Nassarik began. The purpose was naturally to gather the opinions and results of the Guardians on the various floors on the management and operation of the underground tomb of Nassarik before making better arrangements. Usually, the Guardians would gather together for a meeting every once in a while like today. After the results of the discussion were out, Yair Bedard would be responsible for bringing the results to Noah and report to Noah. Then, he would bring back the instructions from Noah. Now, Noah was not in the underground tomb of Nassarik. As the head of the Guardians, Yair Bedard was in charge of all kinds of matters in Nassarik. He would replace Noah in managing the underground tomb of Nassarik. Under such circumstances, it was no wonder that the Guardians would have objections to this agent being so listless. It was not only because Yair Bedard, as the head of the Guardians, should not have such an attitude. It was also because as Noah's agent, this person who got the job that all the Guardians dreamed of working with such an attitude was simply disrespectful to Noah. If they did not know the reason for Yair Bedard's listless performance, the Guardians would have already made things difficult for him. Of course, even if they didn't make things difficult for him, there would still be dissatisfaction. As the representative of the Honorable Supreme, you really shouldn't have such an attitude, Cosset said in a low voice. Shouldn't you feel honored to be able to work for the Honorable Supreme? That's right, Yawad said in a bored tone. If I had known this would happen, I would have let Demiurgos do it. Big sister, you're being too rude. Malay weakly tugged at All's clothes and then looked at Yair Bedard, revealing a delicate smile that a boy shouldn't have. Please keep your spirits up. Serves you right. Siataya held a nail clipper and curled her lips as she trimmed her nails. Who told her to seduce Lord Noah? Isn't it a given that you'll be rejected? That was right. The reason why Yair Bedard was so depressed was because the seduction plan had failed a while ago. With Siataya poking at his sore spot, Yair Bedard's beautiful face twisted to a degree that an ordinary lady would never have. Yair Bedard immediately looked at Siataya with a cold smile. At the very least, I still have a chance to seduce Lord Noah. Compared to a vampire who can only stay in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors all day long and can't even see Lord Noah's face. I can only hide in my room and deal with vampires by myself. This time, it was Siataya's turn to be poked at her sore spot. The corners of her mouth twitched and her face twisted. No matter how one looked at the two of them, they were the highest level of beauty. Their beautiful faces were twisted to a degree that would frighten an ordinary man, causing the timid Malay to shrink his head. Don't be too happy. Siataya's face twitched as she looked at Yair Bedard. The smile on her face was as ugly as it could be. I just didn't have the chance. Once I had the chance, I would have succeeded in one fell swoop. I definitely wouldn't be like you and scare Lord Noah away. Who did you say scared Lord Noah away? Yair Bedard was agitated. Lord Noah just felt that at this important moment when the underground tomb of Nassarik is officially in operation, he can't focus on personal relationships. He's so kind that he couldn't bear to reject me, so he chose to run away. Even if Lord Noah is kind, it can't hide your failure. Siataya puffed up her voluptuous breasts that didn't match her age and said proudly. After this period of time passes, the kind Lord Noah will finally be able to get away from his busy work. I won't have to look after the first, second, and third floors all the time. Then, I can be intimate with Lord Noah. As she said this, Sia Tai's beautiful face turned red and her expression became extremely flirtatious. That look was enough to make any man go crazy and lose his mind. However, the words that came out of the mouth of such a seductive girl made people speechless. I wonder if Lord Noah will love me as fiercely as he did in the throne room. Sia Tai looked as if she was enduring something and felt very uncomfortable. If Lord Noah can whip me as fiercely as he did back then, how great would that be? Seeing Shadia reveal the standard masochist's dazed expression after being ravaged, Yal, Mare, Cossets, and Demiurgos were all speechless. TSK, Yair Beda was speechless. Damn masochist. Ha! Sia Tai's expression stiffened, and she returned to her original state as she glared at Yair Beda. Filthy slut. Who are you calling a filthy slut? Yair Beda glared at Sia Tai. I keep my body clean every day for Lord Noah, and I'm ready to give my first time at any time. Am I not? Sia Tai glared at Yair Beda as well. I take care of my skin every day for Lord Noah, and I'm looking forward to seeing Lord Noah leave whip marks on it. Suddenly, the two extremely beautiful girls started an argument that seemed to have no bottom line. If Noah was here and heard the conversation between Yair Beda and Sia Tai, he might really be scared away and not dare to come back. Yair Beda, Mare, Cossets, and Demiurgos could only look at each other and sigh helplessly. Just as everyone felt that they should stop it, the door suddenly opened. Sebastian, who was wearing a butler's uniform, walked in from outside. As soon as he came in, he spoke to everyone present. Guardians, Khan village has welcomed an uninvited guest. That one sentence silenced everyone present. They're finally here. Demiurgos suddenly smiled. As expected, Lord Noah guessed correctly. In order to not let the resurrection cause unnecessary trouble, Noah had asked Yair Beda and Mare to modify part of the memories of the residents of Khan village so that the resurrection would disappear. However, apart from the matter of the resurrection, there was another matter that couldn't be hidden. That was the disappearance of the sunshine scripture. Sebastian. Yair Beda's expression also became serious as he asked. Is it the people of the Celian theocracy? I'm not sure, but it shouldn't be wrong. Sebastian answered truthfully. Right now, they are investigating a place not far from Khan village. That is where Lord Noah and Lord Yair Beda took care of the sunshine scripture, people. Thank you for your hard work, Sebastian. Yair Beda nodded and looked at all the guardians present. Then, since the people of the Celian theocracy have appeared as Lord Noah predicted, then we should follow Lord Noah's instructions and take them all down. Let's see if we can use them as a means to negotiate with the theocracy. Is it finally time for me to appear? Sia Tai revealed a seductive smile and stood up. Let me carry out Lord Noah's instructions. The guardians nodded in agreement. If Sia Tai, who was the strongest in one-on-one combat among the guardians, were to take action, it would be guaranteed that nothing would go wrong. Unfortunately, the heavens did not listen to their wishes. The reason why there were these metals was because stainless steel was a type of metal that had a very good circulation of mana. In many magic and magic rituals, steel was often used as a catalyst and medium, as well as a base for the construction of magic arrays. It played the role of guiding magic power. Back then, when Gaia and Alea were preparing the Gate of Babylon, they had stuffed everything that could help Noah into it. Because of this, Noah's Gate of Babylon naturally had this type of metal. In addition, these metals were used as catalysts and mediums for large-scale rituals. Noah's Gate of Babylon also treated these metals as consumables. In other words, these metals could also be replenished automatically. With this condition, Noah had an unlimited supply of stainless steel, which was used by countless people in this world as a source of high-level equipment. Thus, selling large amounts of stainless steel was undoubtedly a very profitable thing. Unfortunately, due to the preciousness of stainless steel, not everyone could consume large amounts of it. Therefore, Noah needed the kingdom's warrior captain Gudjefu to act as a middleman and provide him with a channel to sell large amounts of stainless steel. Gudjefu did not disappoint Noah. In the name of the warrior captain, this guy introduced Noah to many capable merchants. With the kingdom's warrior captain as a guarantor, these merchants naturally did not worry about Noah playing any tricks. Thus, Noah established a business relationship with these merchants. Of course, considering that the appearance of large amounts of stainless steel would cause problems in the market, Noah did not sell too much. Even so, with the extremely precious stainless steel as a trade item, Noah still made a huge profit. If this world's money could really be used to maintain the underground tomb in Nasarek, then this channel would become a very important source of funds for Nasarek. If not, then this world's money could be used to purchase other materials that could be used to create equipment, items, and other items. This channel was also very important. Thus, Noah did his best to establish a friendly relationship with these merchants to ensure that this channel would not have any problems. When all this was done, Noah did not even have time to rent a hotel. He could only stay in the kingdom's warrior captain's mansion under Gudjefu's hospitality. As for the group of Grey Rose's adventurers, naturally they would not all stay in Gudjefu's house, but they seemed to be curious about Noah. Come to think of it, there should be a lot of dealings with these adventurers in the future, right? The next day, Noah cleared away the accumulated fatigue from yesterday and slowly woke up from his sleep. Outside the window, the dazzling sunlight spilled into the room and hit Noah's face. When Noah opened his eyes, he was slightly dazzled. He squinted slightly, then propped up his upper body and yawned. As soon as he woke up, Annabelle's voice was transmitted to Noah's ears. "Good morning, Lord Noah." Hearing Annabelle's voice, Noah seemed to remember something. He turned his head and looked aside. He saw that in the corner of the room, Annabelle, who was wearing the same robe as yesterday, saluted respectfully to Noah. She also prepared the water to wash his face and brought it to Noah. "Let me serve Lord Noah to wash up." Yesterday, Annabelle firmly disagreed with letting Noah sleep alone in this unfamiliar place. She tried her best to stay by Noah's side to protect him. If it were an ordinary human, considering that the other party also needed to rest, Noah would never agree to this kind of thing. However, Annabelle was an alien creature and did not need to sleep, so Noah let her be. In addition, in the past, Noah was also known as Medusa's servant to guard him all night in the world of the type moon, so he did not have much discomfort with this matter. Soon, Noah finished washing up under the service of Annabelle, and walked out of the room with Annabelle. As soon as he walked out of the room, Noah heard a conversation. It was from the direction of the hole. With Annabelle, Noah walked in the direction of the hole. After a while, a rather vast hall appeared in front of Noah and Annabelle. In the hall, several people were gathered together to talk. One of them was naturally the owner of this mansion, Gudjefu. In addition to Gudjefu, a group of Grey Rose's elite-level adventurers, led by Haggis, were also all present. However, Noah noticed them. Among these people, there was also a young man. A young man with short blonde hair and a healthy complexion. The young man seemed to have noticed Noah as well. He stared at Noah as if he had seen something he had yearned for even in his dreams. That gaze, to put it nicely, was persistence, to put it bluntly, it was rude. Annabelle's brows were already frowning. Fortunately, after this period of activity in the human world, Annabelle was no longer like before. She didn't want to fight for Noah at the slightest provocation and was very good at restraining herself. As for Noah, he did not care about such a gaze and walked straight forward. "Your Excellency Dole." Gudjefu heard the movement, looked at Noah, and smiled slightly. "Did you rest well last night?" "Very well. Noah returned a smile and said so. Thank you for your hospitality, Your Excellency warrior. No, no, no. Good Jefu shook his head. I'm very honored to be able to entertain someone like you. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to entertain you. Haggis smiled sweetly. Mr. Noah, please sit down and talk. Chapter 1190. In fact, Noah's initial idea was to leave directly after greeting them. After all, led by Hagrid, one of the only two fine steel teams in the kingdom gathered together to discuss with Good Jefu, who was the kingdom's warrior captain. They must be discussing something important, right? Although Noah had met Good Jefu once and received a lot of favors from Good Jefu yesterday, it didn't mean that Noah would be tactless and disturb others when they were discussing business. After all, Noah was also an outsider, wasn't he? However, after being greeted by Hagrid, Noah was embarrassed to leave directly in front of Good Jefu, who had helped him a lot. He had to sit down at Good Jefu's suggestion. Of course, Annabelle, who claimed to be Noah's follower, still stood behind Noah and didn't sit down. She became the only one present besides the young man who didn't sit down. So, Good Jefu said to Annabelle, Your Excellency Annabelle, sit down too. No need. Annabelle didn't even look at Good Jefu and refused directly. I'm Sir Noah's follower. There's no reason to sit with the master. Is that so? Good Jefu didn't want to force it and nodded. Understood. Please forgive me for my improper consideration. Annabelle is just too serious. Noah smiled as if to smooth things over. Sometimes, even if it's my words, she won't listen. Noah's words made Annabelle, who was indifferent in front of Good Jefu and others, panic and speak quickly. No, no such thing. As long as it's Sir Noah's order, no matter what it is, I will do it. Hearing that, Noah was speechless. Of course, Noah knew about this. The sentence just now was just to smooth things over for Annabelle. However, this inflexible maid didn't seem to see anything, which made Noah a little embarrassed. So, Noah stood up and faced Annabelle. He reached out and lifted Annabelle's chin with a slightly frivolous smile on his face. Are you really going to do it no matter what? Annabelle stiffened from head to toe. Looking at Noah's frivolous smile, Annabelle's beautiful face turned red. Not to mention Annabelle, even the people present were somewhat embarrassed by Noah's sudden action. It was especially so for that young man. Even when facing the strongest warrior of the kingdom, Annabelle didn't show any expression, but when she saw Noah blushing coquettishly in front of him, her heart started to beat faster. When she realized that this wasn't good, she quickly straightened her face. There was no other way. The young man was also loyal to a person who was unbelievably beautiful. In the past, the youth did not believe that there was anyone in this world who could compete with his master in terms of appearance. Now, Annabelle's appearance made the young man realize that the world was still very big. Of course, as far as the youth was concerned, no matter how beautiful Annabelle was, she couldn't be compared with his master. However, looking at a girl who could compete with his master in terms of beauty blushing, the youth couldn't help but feel his heart beating faster. In this way, it made the others feel as if they had disturbed Noah, which made them even more embarrassed than Noah. Noah felt that it was about time. He laughed in his heart and couldn't help but pat Annabelle's pretty face. As a girl, especially a beautiful girl, you can't say to a man, I will listen to you no matter what. Otherwise, not every man can think of Pian Pian. After speaking, Noah released the blushing Annabelle's chin, turned around again, and sat down contentedly. It's really enviable that Mr. Noah can have such a beautiful follower. Hagrid smiled bitterly. To be honest, apart from Lana, I really haven't seen anyone more beautiful than Miss Annabelle. The people present nodded one after another, making the youth at the side look like he wanted to say something but stopped. Oh. Gegland grinned. This virgin seems to be unconvinced. Virgin. The corner of Noah's mouth twitched, and he cast a strange look at the youth. "I'm not a virgin." The youth finally couldn't help but speak up. "I have a name. My name is Clem." "You actually refuted?" Gegland said with some surprise. "Usually, when I call you that, don't you look indifferent?" "That's because Clem doesn't care what others think of him," Gurdjieff said helplessly. "However, in front of the people Clem cares about, it's better to give him some face." Gurdjieff's words made Noah's heart move slightly, and he looked at Clem. Clem's expression changed, and he also looked at Noah. "Let me introduce." Miyagi spoke up at the right time. "Mr. Noah should have heard of the Golden Princess, right?" Miyagi's words awakened a part of Noah's memory of the information he had collected during this period of time. Of course, Noah had heard of that name before. Because, in the whole kingdom, the fame of this name, to a certain extent, was even above the kingdom's warrior Captain Gurdjieff and the leader of the Fine Steel Adventurers team, Miyagi. Lana Ter Chardin Lal Van Seve. With a head of blonde hair as a symbol, she was known for her beauty and wisdom both domestically and abroad, and was praised as the Golden Princess. It was said that this princess had proposed many cross-era policies, although most of them were obstructed by the nobles who cared about their own interests, causing many of them to be rejected. Even so, it still had a great impact on the kingdom. For example, the abolition of the slavery system and the establishment of the Adventurers Guild were facilitated by this princess. Even the kingdom's governance would privately refer to this princess' proposals. Therefore, it was impossible for Noah not to have heard of this princess's name. As if she saw something from Noah's expression, Miyagi smiled slightly and pointed at Clem. "This is Princess Lana's follower, responsible for the princess's safety." Chapter 1191. Once upon a time, there was a saying that went like this. The so-called success referred to 99% hard work and 1% talent. From this saying, there was no doubt that hard work was the most important thing for a person to do something. Thus, there was the saying that the clumsy bird flies first. However, if the smart bird flew with all its might from the start, could the clumsy bird catch up? The answer was naturally no. Thus, some people said, although 99% hard work was important, that 1% talent was more important than 99% hard work. If the so-called success was 100%, then even if talent was a small part of it, without it, even if 99% of hard work was put in, lacking that 1%, one would never be able to achieve success. It was all right to apply this phrase to Clem. Clem himself was the clearest. Although he was the princess's follower, Clem's strength wasn't that outstanding. At most, he was slightly stronger than ordinary warriors and soldiers. In terms of adventurers' levels, Clem was roughly equivalent to a gold adventurer. In terms of Yggdrasil's level, Clem was around level 10. Not to mention Gurdjieff, who was the strongest warrior in the kingdom, and not to mention the fine steel-tier adventurers like Hagagi and her party, even if they were compared to many other adventurers, they would still be much weaker. Originally, with Clem's strength, it was impossible for him to become the follower of such a famous princess. The reason why Clem could become the princess's attendant was that when he was young, he was picked up by the princess when he was on the brink of death. That was how he became the princess's attendant. Therefore, the reason why Clem could become the princess's attendant was not because of his outstanding strength, nor was it because of his amazing talent, but because of his fortuitous encounters when he was young. Furthermore, Clem didn't have any talent in martial arts or magic. Putting aside the fact that he hadn't learned any magic, just the ability of a warrior was enough. No matter how much Clem practiced with the sword, even to the point where his hands were bleeding and blisters were breaking out, he still wasn't able to reach the level he had hoped for. A gold adventurer. For those with extraordinary talent, it was a low wall that could be easily crossed. But to Clem, it was an achievement that he had worked so hard to achieve. Then, recently, Clem felt it. The speed of his improvement was getting slower and slower, to the point where it was infinitely close to zero. If this continued, Clem would not be able to make any more progress. He would only be able to achieve this in his lifetime. It was because of this that Clem couldn't wait to ask for guidance after knowing that Noah was an existence more powerful than Gudjiafu. Perhaps, Noah had a way to solve his predicament. At least, Clem didn't want to admit defeat, let alone give up. Thus, Clem could only remain silent in the face of Ibiliua's words. Perhaps, little brother Clem doesn't have talent in martial arts and magic, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have talent in other areas. If he can spend this effort in these areas, then wouldn't it be like what Miss Ibiliu said, that talent can blossom and bear fruit? Saying such a sentence, Noah looked at Clem. Why do you want to become stronger? Why do I want to become stronger? This question made Clem clench his fist. Once, Clem was a child that no one wanted. He didn't even see his parents' faces, wandering the kingdom as an orphan. In such a world, this was not a rare thing. But that day, Clem met light. She was called the Gold by the people, and had the beauty that no one in the kingdom could match. This princess didn't care about the beggar-like, dirty Clem at all, and extended her hand to him. From that moment onwards, Clem's fate changed. Then, was there a second reason why Clem wanted to become stronger? I want to have power. Clem spat out a strong and powerful voice. The power to protect Lady Lana from any enemy. Hearing this, Noah smiled and stood up. Then let me see how strong this power is. Clem was stunned. In Gudjiafu's mansion, there was a rather spacious courtyard. At this moment, in this courtyard, with Gudjiafu and Haggis as the leaders, Ibiliu, Gragland, Hina, and Tia were all gathered together. Annabelle was alone at the other end. However, everyone's gaze was on the center of the courtyard. There, Noah and Clem were facing each other. Noah's expression was calm. Clem, on the other hand, was a bit serious, and there was a faint trace of nervousness. Noah raised his eyes and looked at Clem, who was across from him. Don't worry about it. Just attack as much as you like. Chapter 1192. Noah's words startled Clem. After hesitating for a moment, he asked tentatively. Are you not going to use any weapons? Indeed. Even though Clem wasn't equipped with any equipment, he still had a long sword at his waist. One of his hands was gripping the sword tightly, obviously intending to use a sword. However, not only was Noah dressed in casual clothes, he didn't even carry a single weapon. Moreover, it seemed that Noah didn't intend to use any weapons when facing Clem. Of course, Clem didn't think that Noah was looking down on him. The reason why he asked this question was to get some information. Because if he wasn't going to use any weapons, it was very likely that he was going to use magic. Clem wanted to use this as an excuse to get information about Noah's upcoming battle tactics. If Noah intended to use a weapon, it meant that he was going to use the methods of a warrior to fight. If Noah insisted on not using any weapons, then Clem had to be wary of Noah using magic. This was Clem's plan. However, in the next moment, Noah's action stunned everyone present. A weapon. A thought-provoking smile appeared on Noah's face. He raised his hand and extended a finger. Then I'll use this finger to fight you. Finger. Finger. Clem was completely stunned. Hagrid, Gudjiafu, Ibiliu, Gorgland, Tina, and the others were also stunned. What is the meaning of this? Gorgland frowned. Is that guy looking down on us? The others exchanged glances with each other before turning to look at Noah with a slightly serious expression. They wanted to see how Noah intended to fight with a single finger. On the other hand, looking at Clem's dazed expression, Noah revealed a mischievous smile. What? Not going to attack? Don't tell me you're afraid of my finger. Noah's words made Clem react. He stared at Noah's finger, trying to see something from it. Unfortunately, no matter how he looked, Clem could only see a very ordinary finger. With no other choice, Clem could only warn himself that he had to be more vigilant. The other party was an expert that even the strongest warrior in the kingdom admitted to being inferior to. Then, no matter what kind of method the other party planned to use, compared to Clem, he would only be stronger, not weaker. If he let his guard down because of this, it would be over. Thus, Clem took a deep breath and slowly pulled out the long sword at his waist. He pointed it at Noah and lowered his waist as he spoke in a low voice. "Then, I'm going." The moment he finished speaking, Clem was like a spring that had been pushed to its limit. His entire body suddenly shot out and swept towards Noah. His speed was naturally faster than anyone present. However, the distance between Noah and Clem wasn't that far to begin with. Thus, in just a blink of an eye, Clem flashed in front of Noah and raised the long sword in his hand above his head. With a tearing sound, he heavily chopped down at Noah's shoulder. Chapter 1193. Hiya! With an imposing shout, the sharp longsword in Clem's hand turned into streaks of sword light. Like a cutting machine, it slashed towards Noah's body. Looking at the continuous slashes, Noah stretched out his finger with an expressionless face. He only moved when the sword lights that resembled a cutting machine shot toward him. On the side, everyone could only see that just like Clem's slash, Noah's hand suddenly turned into a blur as it danced continuously. Clang, 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 clang. Immediately, the numerous merciless slashes that were rushing toward Noah were blocked by his extremely ordinary finger amidst clear clashing sounds. Clang! When the last slash landed on Noah's finger, and the sharp long sword was blocked by Noah's finger, everyone present saw it. Noah blocked one slash after another. His fingers, which were as hard as steel, suddenly moved. Like an arrow leaving the bowstring, he swept towards Clem's forehead and flicked his finger. Bang! Undoubtedly, it was just a flick of the forehead, but it caused a muffled sound. With a muffled sound, Clem was abruptly sent flying by that extremely ordinary finger. Like a kite with a broken string, he slammed into a wall amidst the sharp sound of breaking air. Cough! Clem only felt that all the air in his chest had been spat out at this moment. His head felt as if it had been hit by a stick, and even his vision became blurry. Logically speaking, if one's head was struck by a force that could send a robust youth flying, it wouldn't be strange for one's head to explode. However, Clem didn't feel any intense pain on his forehead. He only felt a sharp pain on his back when he hit the wall. Clem knew what this meant. It meant that not only did Noah have the terrifying ability to block sharp long swords without suffering any injuries, he could also control this ability to perfection. When Clem felt dizzy and his vision became blurry, Noah's voice sounded again. "If that Princess Lana was here right now, I would only need a single second to kill her while you're still lying there." Clem's heart trembled. A strong emotion burst forth from Clem's heart, causing Clem's willpower to soar several times. His incomparably dizzy mind was forcibly stirred up, and he gradually regained consciousness. His vision began to recover. The person who pointed a finger at him was also imprinted in Clem's eyes. Clem tightly clenched his teeth and forced his body to support himself. With one hand on the wall, he stood up shakily. The entire process was extremely difficult, but in the end, Clem successfully stood up. Seeing Clem like this, Noah narrowed his eyes and suddenly smiled. "So that's how it is. Your kind intentions are truly rare." After saying this, Noah's expression changed. His expression became emotionless. It's just that, in the face of death, will this kind of heart be able to remain intact? Following this sentence, in the next instant, an astonishing aura burst forth from Noah's body. That aura was like a tangible pressure, enveloping the entire space. Everyone present felt their shoulders become heavy, and their bodies involuntarily lowered slightly. Hagrid, Gudjiafu, Ibilua, Gegland, Hina, T, and the others were completely speechless. Because, even if they were steel-grade existences that stood at the peak of humanity, they still felt a burst of shock. Even these players who were at least level 29 were in such a state, let alone Clem, who was only level 10. Clem felt as if his heart was being squeezed tightly by a hand. On the opposite side, Noah's figure suddenly expanded to an indescribable height in Clem's eyes, making Clem feel as if his breathing had stopped. It couldn't be helped. Without using authority, even if he didn't use the power of Demon Slayer, or Gate of Babylon, Noah was still comparable to a level 100 existence. The aura released by a level 100 existence made even Ibilua, who was estimated by Noah to be around level 50, stiffen, not to mention Clem who was around level 10. However, Noah didn't care about Clem's reaction at all and slowly opened his mouth. Until now, you were the one who launched the attack. Now, it's time for me to attack. Saying this, Noah's voice pierced Clem's heart. So, if you don't want to die, then resist with all your might. At this moment, Noah's voice was already far away in Clem's ears, as if it had become incomparably distant, but Clem heard it clearly. Thus, Clem knew. 1 second. In the next second, if he couldn't react, then he would die. Rationally, Clem told himself that Noah wouldn't suddenly kill him. However, when he felt Noah's aura coming towards him like a storm, Clem couldn't help but think this way. Perhaps, he really would die. Death. His brain couldn't function anymore. His body couldn't move. At this moment, there were two kinds of emotions in Clem's heart. 1. Fear. 2. Anger. The fear was the fear of Noah. Anger is anger at oneself. Clem could tell anyone without hesitation that he wasn't afraid of death. If he could die for his master, then it didn't matter when he died. However, the master he needed to protect wasn't by his side, nor was he facing any danger. Instead, he was waiting for his guards in the palace. Under such circumstances, how can I die without doing anything? Clem roared. In his heart, his anger towards himself overcame his fear. At this moment, Clem seemed to hear a pop sound in his brain, as if something was opened. Immediately, a torrent rushed back and forth in Clem's body. That torrent was called power. Then, Clem felt it. His hands could move. His feet could move. His senses seemed to have reached their limits, and he could even feel the vibrations in the air. As everyone knew, in order to prevent the body from overloading, the human brain would limit the power of the muscles to a certain extent. However, when one reached the limit, the brain's limit on the muscles would be temporarily lifted, allowing the body to display an unimaginable explosive power. At this moment, the human brain would secrete a large amount of hormones, and their thinking ability would be focused on survival. The brain would be able to process all kinds of huge amounts of information at high speed, searching for the best way to act. Now, Clem was in such a situation. Thus, in that instant, Clem's physical body, perception, and physical abilities were raised to a whole new level. His strength, which was originally only at the level of a gold adventurer, was promoted to platinum adventurer in one go. Hiya! With an explosive shout, Clem gripped his sword so tightly that his veins popped out. He bent down and suddenly shot towards Noah like a bullet fired from a gun. In the next moment, a sword that flashed with cold light cut through the air. With a sharp sword hum, it slashed towards Noah's direction. Clang! A crisp sound that was louder than any of the previous collisions resounded throughout the courtyard. However, it was not the sound of fingers clashing with swords. Instead, it was the sound of the overly powerful slash that caused the sharp long sword to break into two pieces. The broken sword was thrown into the air and spun like a windmill. Finally, it stabbed into the ground in the distance. Clem, on the other hand, gripped the remaining half of his sword tightly and stared at Noah. Under Clem's gaze, Noah was silent for a moment. Then, he smiled at Clem. Congratulations, you've successfully broken through. It's just that the Hachiko's infiltration into the kingdom is really too terrifying. With those aristocrats secretly supporting them, it's really too difficult to completely eradicate them. Speaking here, Ohajisai looked and looked. And said. In the Yakushi, the 8 departments, S8 departments. The Yakushi organizations assesses. Hearing this, Noah more or less understood what Haggis was trying to say. Recently, we have received reliable information. Haggis looked straight at Noah. It seems that the meeting of the managers of the various departments of the 8-book finger will be held soon. Ibilua, Gegland, and Tina straightened their backs slightly at Haggis' words. Noah, who was keenly aware of this, came to a realization. No wonder the 3 fine steel-level adventurers from the Blue Rose would suddenly appear in a border area like Elantir. It turned out that they had gone there to collect information on the Hachibana. Do you still remember the outlaws from yesterday, Sir Dole? Gujiefu asked Noah. Those are the pawns that Hachibana first sent to the capital to prepare for the meeting. My subordinates discovered their tracks by chance, so I led the troops to chase after them. This proves that the meeting of the various departments of Hachibana will indeed be held in the capital in a few days. This is undoubtedly a good opportunity. Haggis said in a loud voice. If we can find the location where the Hachibana is holding the meeting and take down those managers, even if we can't destroy the entire Hachibana, we can at least hurt the Hachibana. Is that so? Noah looked at Haggis meaningfully. But isn't the Hachibana secretly colluding with many nobles? Even if we arrest them, it won't be long before they are declared innocent and released with the help of those nobles, right? Hearing this, Haihei suddenly smiled. That's only if our goal is to arrest them. There was no one who didn't understand the meaning behind Higusi's words. Including Annabelle and Clem. Those guys are just pests that pollute the kingdom. Gujiefu snorted coldly and said. Eradicating all of them is definitely beneficial to the kingdom. If that's the case, with everyone here, is there any problem? Noah looked around at Haggis and the rest. We have Sir Gujiefu, who is known as the strongest warrior in the kingdom, and the various elite fine steel-level adventurers. Can't we take down the Hachibana? Haggis and the rest instantly looked at each other, then looked at Noah in unison. Mr. Noah, the criminal organization of the Hachibana is not simple at all. Haggis said seriously. In the 8 departments of the Hachibana, the security department in charge of bodyguards has many experts. Among them, there are 6 of the highest-level bodyguards known as the 6 Arms. It is said that every member of the 6 Arms is in existence that can compete with the fine steel-level adventurers. However, Hagi still accepted the princess's request without hesitation. The rest of the members didn't seem to have any objections. So, Agagi and her group were really thinking for the kingdom, right? I was born a commoner, and I relied on my strength to get the position of warrior captain. I'm trusted by the king, and I've become a thorn in the eyes of the nobles. They can't wait to find a chance to get rid of me. They're always watching me, and it's no doubt inconvenient for me to take action. Gujiefu looked straight at Noah. Furthermore, the nobles are in cahoots with the Hachibana. My direct subordinates and I are unable to act rashly. That's why, if it's possible, we hope to receive your assistance, Your Excellency Dole. Of course, we won't let you suffer a loss. Hagi smiled mischievously. As the biggest criminal organization in the kingdom, the Hachibana must have taken a lot of benefits in secret. In the process of eliminating the Hachibana, no matter what kind of benefits we get, those benefits will belong to Mr. Noah. What do you think? Hagi's words made Noah laugh uncontrollably. Is this considered as a double cross? Anyway, if it's confiscated, it will be divided among the nobles who are in cahoots with the Hachibana for various reasons, right? Hagi shrugged. If that's the case, why don't we give it all to Mr. Noah? We can let anyone take advantage of it, but not those rotten people. Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he was indeed tempted. As the biggest criminal organization in the kingdom, the Hachibana was definitely the kind that was overflowing with wealth. Although Noah had endless steel to sell to ensure that there would be no shortage of funds, the operation of the big underground tomb in Nassarik was not only inseparable from money, but also the production of various weapons, equipment, and props could not be done without materials. In the Hachibana, there should be a lot of such materials, right? Moreover, many of the equipment, props, and items in this world also had magical uses. There must be a lot hidden in the Hachibana. For these resources, Noah had enough reasons to agree. What's more, Gudjefu let Noah get a huge gain with his own connections. Noah still owed this warrior such a favor. Since dealing with the Hachibana could give him a huge gain, and he could also return Gudjefu's favor, it was worth it to make a move. Annabelle. Noah looked slightly at Annabelle, who had been standing behind him, and asked, "What do you think?" Annabelle was slightly stunned. She didn't seem to expect Noah to ask for her opinion. When she reacted, she immediately said, "Everything will be decided by Master Noah." Well, this answer was within his expectations. At that moment, Noah pondered for a moment and looked at Agagi and Gudjefu. "What do you plan to do?" Hearing this, Agagi and the others suddenly smiled. This matter was settled. When the entire capital once again ushered in noon, in the direction of the city gate, a group of people quietly appeared here. With Agagi as the leader, the group of Wild Rose mercenary members had basically changed their equipment. Both Agagi and Gigrain had put on armor. Unlike Gigrain's heavy armor that was almost like a burly man's, Agagi was equipped with light armor. Only the breastplate, gauntlets, boots, and armor skirt were covered with a red tights. Together with her golden hair that shone in the moonlight, she could be described as heroic and radiant. Meanwhile, Tina and Tia had changed into tight-fitting black suits with black veils covering their faces, leaving only their eyes exposed. They were also equipped with breastplates, gauntlets, and kneecaps, and each of them held a dagger in their hands. Only Abra was still wearing the same black robe and mask. She hadn't changed at all. Of course, it was not only Abra who did not change. Noah and Annabelle also did not change their equipment. The group stood in front of the city gate. After confirming their equipment and the number of people, they nodded to each other. "Then, let's confirm the battle plan for this time," Agagi said as she stepped forward. She had Tina and Tia spread out a map and pointed to a location on the map. "Our target this time is here. This is..." Noah looked at the mark on the map and frowned slightly. "A village." The place Agagi was pointing to was a village. "This is not an ordinary village," Agagi said in a serious tone. "We have already investigated. This village is one of the departments in charge of the drug trade. It is used to cultivate drugs." "Cultivate drugs?" Noah said in surprise. "An entire village is cultivating drugs?" "Yes." Agagi nodded heavily. "This is only one of them." When she said this, there was a hint of disgust in her voice. That was disgust towards the nobles. In the kingdom, most of the land was owned by the nobles. The royal family only owned 30% of the land. The rest was privately owned. And this village was located in the territory of one of the nobles. Since the entire village was cultivating drugs, it was obvious that the nobles of this territory had instructed them to do so. One could only imagine how evil the nobles were. "Our mission this time is to destroy this village." Agagi calmed herself down and explained the reason. "Because we still don't know where the meetings of the various departments of the Hachibana are held. With the support of the nobles, it will be difficult for us to find out. So, as long as we attack this village, we will definitely alert the other party. Alert the other party. Noah was confused. What would happen if they alerted the other party? Wouldn't it alert the other party and make them more vigilant? Chapter 1197. It was unknown if Ohagi saw through the doubts in Noah's heart, but she said this in a fluent manner. Although the Hachibungi is called an organization on the surface, in reality, as everyone knows, they are made up of 8 departments. Rather than saying that they are an organization, it would be more accurate to say that they are 8 organizations. However, these 8 organizations are cooperating with each other, and they are completely united by their own interests. Ohagi pointed at the village on the map that was used to cultivate drugs. If we destroy one of the departments, which is the stronghold used by the drug trade department to cultivate drugs, then we should be able to obtain information on the other 7 departments. Haihei's words undoubtedly confused the rest of the people. Why was Ohagi so sure that the village had information on the other 7 departments of the Hachibungi? Logically speaking, as partners in the same organization, this kind of important information that could possibly leak the information of their partners should not be very likely to appear, right? Only Noah, after thinking about how Ohagi had specifically emphasized that the Hachibungi was only a cooperative organization, his heart skipped a beat. You mean to say that the drug department that is cultivating drugs in this village will deliberately put the information of the other 7 departments there to provide to the enemy? That's right. Ohagi laughed coldly. If it is an enemy that has the ability to destroy the stronghold, then for a department, it will definitely be a very difficult enemy to deal with. Knowing this clearly, when a department is in trouble, this kind of organization that is only tied together by interests will definitely think of how to stay out of it. And in order to not let the other departments stay out of it, and in order to divert the powerful enemy's attention to the other departments, every department of the Hachibungi should have prepared the information of the other departments in advance in the stronghold, right? Ibirui smacked her lips. Although I had already expected that the so-called underworld organizations would not really unite, I didn't expect it to be this ridiculous. George Land, Hina, and T also showed some disgust on their faces. Obviously, this kind of behavior that was equivalent to betraying one's companions, for an adventurer team that could entrust their lives to each other, it was definitely despicable. So, as long as we destroy this village, we can get information on the other 7 departments besides the drug department. Haggis clapped her hands, attracting everyone's attention. In addition, when we investigated this village, we also found out about the drug department. In this way, we have gathered all the information about the 8 departments of the 8 books. As long as they could gather all the information about the headquarters of the Hachibana's 8 departments and destroy them in one fell swoop, they would definitely be able to deal a fatal blow to the Hachibana. When that happened, the managers of the 8 departments that happened to be gathered in the capital would no longer be able to sit still. They would have no choice but to seek help from the nobles in the capital who were in cahoots with them. This way, with Hagi's status as a noble and a fine steel adventurer, together with good Jifu's spies and Princess Lana's intelligence, they would definitely be able to follow the clues and find out where the managers of the 8 departments of the Hachikatsu are gathered. Destroy all of the Hachibana's main camps and eliminate all of the managers of the 8 departments. Then, the Hachibana will only be left with a few remnants, and the threat it poses to the kingdom will be greatly reduced. Hagi's eyes shone brightly. This is our plan. Hearing this, the gazes of the fine steel adventurers gathered on Noah. Although it was said that it would be easy to destroy the 8 main camps of the Hachibana, then eliminate the managers of the 8 departments, greatly weakening the power of the Hachibana. But how could it be easy to do? Other things aside, the 8 main camps of the Hachibana would definitely be filled with experts. Without a certain amount of military strength, it would be impossible to destroy them. Unfortunately, the kingdom was unable to provide any help in this aspect, so it could only be done by Haggis and her team. With the strength of one of the only 2 fine steel adventurer teams in the kingdom, destroying the main camps of the Hachibana's departments might not be difficult. But the difficult part was that once the main camp of a department was destroyed, they would know that the information about their own department would definitely be prepared by the manager of the destroyed department beforehand. The other departments in the stronghold would definitely respond accordingly, or even change their stronghold directly. Thus, if they wanted to destroy the main camps of the 8 departments of the Hachibana, they could only act at the same time. This way, even if every adventurer of the Blue Rose was the highest level fine steel adventurer and had the ability to destroy a stronghold by themselves, in the situation where there were only 5 members, they could only destroy the main camps of 5 departments at the same time. In addition, there was still the strongest fighter in the Hachibana, 6 Arms, who could be said to be comparable to a fine steel adventurer, so this plan was rather unrealistic. Unless Noah made a move. With Noah's inhuman combat power, and Annabelle, whose strength was still unknown, the chances of winning would be the highest. Fortunately, Hina and T were not that heavy, and the 2 of them could ride on one floating board. Gerland's heavy body was a problem, but she had a magic ring that could reduce the weight, so there was no problem. Thus, not long after, the group flew into the sky at the same time, and disappeared in mid-air. It had to be said that using the flight spell to hasten their journey was indeed very efficient. In less than an hour, the group arrived at the designated mountain range. Let's land at the edge of the mountain range. In mid-air, Ohajisai said so. There are many flying magic beasts in the mountain range. If we fly directly, we will definitely be attacked by a large number of flying magic beasts. The group nodded, and followed behind Ohajisai, descending towards the mountain range. We'll have to see what kind of monster it is, Giglan said casually as he carried his weapon. If they're goblins and ogres, it doesn't matter how many of them there are. On the other hand, if a few of the more powerful undying come, we'll be in big trouble, Tina said. When I was collecting information, I heard that in this mountain range, there are indeed some powerful undead. Even the demon tribes are not willing to provoke them. But don't we still have Mr. Noah and Iberia? T retorted. With those 2 around, even if there are powerful undead, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Everyone's words made Noah mutter in his heart. That might not be the case. If there were undead like Shadya in this mountain range, then a few of them could really cause trouble for Noah. However, Shadya was a true ancestor of vampires at level 100. With the power level of this world, even if there were such existences, it was impossible for there to be so many of them. Moreover, this mountain range was not very far from human settlements. Many people had crossed this place before. If there really were undead of that level, then this place would have become a complete forbidden zone. No one would want to come here. In short, it's better to be careful, Noah reminded. I can feel the aura of many magical beasts mixed in the air. There should be many magical beasts living nearby. Regardless of their level, if we get entangled with them, it will definitely take some time. If it takes until night time, then it will be troublesome. Everyone immediately looked at each other and nodded their heads. If they were to fight at night, it would indeed be quite disadvantageous for humans. This was because many magical beasts had night vision and would not be affected by darkness. Humans did not have this ability. Although there were magic tools that could give people night vision, it was best to avoid fighting at night if they could avoid it. Moreover, it was not just night vision. Many magical beasts had powers that humans did not have. Undead would not tire, but humans needed to rest at night. Once they fought at night, it would definitely be very bad for humans. Immediately, after everyone confirmed the tools they could use, they raised their vigilance and walked into the forest. Noah walked at the back of the group of fine steel adventurers. No, the one walking at the back should be Annabelle. At this time, the combat maid was observing the surroundings while approaching Noah to ask for instructions from Noah. Lord Noah, since we're going to fight the tribes of monsters and humans, why don't we ask Nasarik to send an army over? No need. Noah shook his head. The creatures in Nasarik are all mutants. It is not suitable for them to move in groups in front of humans. Moreover, with our strength, it will not be difficult to solve this incident. There is no need to mobilize a large force. You just need to be ready to go all out at any time. Yes. Annabelle bowed her head and accepted the order. Then she continued to guard Noah's back, vigilant of the surroundings. Although Annabelle was only level 63, she was an 8th order magic caster. As long as Annabelle went all out, she would definitely be a legendary existence for humans who could not even use 7th order magic. In order not to cause unnecessary trouble, Noah let Annabelle only use 5th order magic on the surface. However, if they really encountered trouble, they would be fools to hold back. So, the group began to move cautiously in the dense forest, but they moved unswervingly in the direction of the village. The forest was eerily silent. There was not even the sound of birds, beasts, or insects. Under such circumstances, in order to avoid fatigue caused by high concentration, Noah and the others divided into groups to guard the surroundings. However, the more they walked, the more Noah felt that something was wrong. It's a little strange, although Noah's muttering was soft, at this moment, even the sound of a needle falling to the ground could be heard clearly. No one could not hear his voice. Mr. Noah, do you think so too? Annabelle slowly came to Noah's side. She did not care about the difference between a man and a woman. She directly stuck close to Noah and let her voice be as soft as possible. In any case, it's really strange for it to be so quiet. Even if there are no birds, beasts, or insects, it's fine. There are many magical beast tribes living in this mountain range. It's impossible for there to be no movement. Noah did not care about the fragrance from Annabelle's body and said to himself. Moreover, the atmosphere in the air is getting more and more oppressive. It feels like something incredible is about to appear in front of us. Annabelle was silent. The forest where there were no signs of magical beasts was silent. That silence made one's hair stand on end. The forest was filled with a dangerous aura, not knowing what would happen at any time. The road started to become uneven again. Sometimes, there would even be 3 or 4 forks in the road. It was like an intricate maze. Annabelle, Ibirui, and the others did not want to miss a suspicious place. They spread out a security net in all directions. With the help of the map, they chose the path to their destination and went deeper into the forest. However, the more they went, the more the oppressive atmosphere and uneasiness spread in the hearts of the group. Finally, at a certain moment, Noah suddenly raised his head and looked forward. It's here. This sentence did not elicit any reaction from anyone. It should be said that it did not have time to elicit any reaction from anyone. In the next second, in front of them, a slight tremor came very suddenly. Everyone's eyes narrowed. A large group of black shadows appeared without any warning and rushed over amidst the slight tremor of the ground. Chapter 1199. Rumble. As the tremors on the ground became more frequent and violent, the main body of a large group of black shadows that surged out from the forest in front was also exposed in front of everyone. It was a herd of horses. They were a group of 8-legged horses that were larger than ordinary horses. That's... Noah's eyes flashed. 8-legged horses. 8-legged horses. They were a type of demonic creature. They looked like horses, but had 8 legs. They were known for their outstanding muscle strength, endurance, and mobility, and were generally regarded as the most outstanding land demonic creatures. These demonic creatures were not unfamiliar to humans. Regardless of whether it was in kingdoms, empires, or theocracies, there were people who specialized in capturing and taming these demonic creatures for daily use. Of course, no matter how much they resembled horses, these 8-legged horses were still demonic creatures. Not only did they possess a certain degree of strength, but they were also extremely ferocious. It was extremely difficult to capture or tame them. Because of this, the market price of 8-legged horses was shockingly high. They were more expensive than 5 well-trained war horses. Even ordinary nobles couldn't easily own one. Now, the herd of 8-legged horses that numbered in the hundreds were like galloping wild beasts. They raised their heads and neighed at the sky with ferocious glints in their eyes. They charged forward in a frenzy amidst the powerful stomps of the ground. If such a herd of demonic creatures charged over, no matter how strong a person was, they would most likely lose their life to their powerful legs. Thus, without any hesitation, Hagrid gave the order. Go! Ibirua, Gorglant, Tina, and Tia raised their heads at the same time. They moved at the same time as if they had agreed beforehand. Roar, ooh, 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 ooh. The burly Geegland let out a furious roar. He raised the weapon in his hand and charged towards the horde of 8-legged horses in front of him. The weapon in Gorgland's hand was a warhammer with spikes protruding from the side like an axe. It was a first-tier weapon that could even shatter steel with a single strike. It wasn't just the weapon. Almost all of Gorgland's equipment could be considered top-tier magic tools. Geegland was like a war chariot as he fearlessly charged into the horde of 8-legged horses with his top-tier equipment and powerful physique. Just as Gorgland was about to come into contact with the horde of 8-legged horses, he smashed the warhammer in his hand heavily onto the ground. Bang! The moment the muffled sound rang out, a shocking shockwave burst out from the ground, smashing the ground into pieces. The shockwave that exploded surged toward the horde of 8-legged horses like a tide, sending the incredibly strong demonic creatures flying and instantly disrupting the horde's momentum. Chee! Almost at the same time, 2 black shadows tore through the air and shot out explosively from the sides of Gurlant, who hadn't retracted his spiked warhammer from the ground. Like ghosts, they swept past the 8-legged horses that were sent flying. Poochie! The sound of their bodies being pierced reverberated through the air. It was the sound of the 8-legged horses' bodies being sliced apart by the sharp daggers in the instant that the 2 shadows flashed past them. In the next second, the 8-legged horses that were sliced apart by the sharp daggers fell to the ground one after another. The 8-legged horses that fell to the ground either turned a strange green all over, or their wounds didn't shed a single drop of blood. It was as if they had been sucked dry and shriveled up. The 8-legged horses that had turned a strange green all died from poison. The poison dagger that they had bought from Noah was fully utilized by Tina and Tia. In addition to the poison dagger, Tina and Tia also had their own famed weapon, the vampiric dagger. As the name implied, it was a special weapon that could absorb all blood in an instant. The 8-legged horses that didn't shed any blood and shriveled up were easily killed by this weapon. When Gorgland raised his warhammer again, Tina and Tia, who had turned into ghostly shadows, had already charged back and forth through the horde of 8-legged horses, killing dozens of 8-legged horses along the way. As for Ibirua, this young girl used fly when Gorgland, Tina, and Tia charged out. She floated in the air and waved her hand. Rich magic fluctuations immediately reverberated around her petite body. In the next moment, a series of crystal-like knight spears suddenly appeared around Ibirua. Like arrows, they shot out explosively and fell into the horde of 8-legged horses. Poochie 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 poochie. The powerful 8-legged horses were easily pierced through from top to bottom by the crystal spears. They fell to the ground amidst mournful cries. Seeing the crystal spears that appeared around Ibirua, Noah was slightly surprised. That's the 4th rank spell, Crystal Knight Spear. Ibirua smiled sweetly at Noah. Ibirua is an elemental mage, and her spell is limited to the most powerful type of earth element crystal. Hearing this, Noah looked at Ibirua with interest. As mentioned before, there were all kinds of professions in this world. Elemental mages were one of the professions of magic chanters. Elemental mages were specialized magic chanters that focused on strengthening a specific attribute. When these mages used spells that focused on strengthening a specific attribute, their attack power would increase by several times. But on the other hand, once their area of expertise was sealed, they would become very weak. Chapter 1200. Bam! When the last eight-legged horse fell to the ground with a muffled thud, the entire space returned to silence. In the dense forest, the eight-legged horses were lying on the ground in different states of death. Some were pierced through by crystal-like night spears. Some had their chests crushed by violent spikes and hammers. Some of them were stained green by the extremely poisonous dagger. Some of them had their blood sucked dry by the bloody blades. There were so many different ways to die that it made one's hair stand on end. Among the horde of horse-like corpses, Abirua, Giglant, Tina, and T stood in different positions and surveyed their surroundings. Even after dealing with hundreds of powerful magical creatures, the four fine steel adventurers didn't show the slightest sign of fatigue. That wasn't because the four of them were wearing magical tools that didn't allow them to get tired. Instead, it was because they were all fine steel adventurers. They were far from having to use their full strength to fight until they were out of breath. In particular, some of them were wearing magic tools that could restore physical strength and heal injuries. This level of danger was nothing compared to the true danger. Not only that, but the four of them were also in the mood to chat. Hundreds of eight-legged horses, they all died just like that. It's a pity. If we didn't have another mission this time, we would have captured all of these eight-legged horses and sold them. Even if they weren't tamed, some arrogant nobles would have eagerly bought them, right? That's one less chance to make a fortune. Abirua, Giglant, Tina, and T chatted leisurely. Abirua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Only Noah was slowly pacing between the eight-legged horse corpses. His brows were tightly furrowed, and the more he walked, the tighter his frown became. Abirua keenly sensed that something was wrong with Noah and turned to Noah. "What's wrong?" Abirua asked directly. "Is there something wrong?" "Something wrong." Noah stopped and shrugged. "Or should I say, there's something wrong from the start." Noah's words made Abirua and the others a little confused. What did he mean by that? Seeing this, Noah voiced his opinion. "I think the process of you guys dealing with these eight-legged horses was a little too smooth." This sentence made Abirua and the others even more confused. What's so strange about it being so smooth? Geglant's manly and resolute face furrowed his brows into a knot. "It's just a bunch of eight-legged horses. You don't think we had a hard time dealing with them, do you?" Although the eight-legged horse was a demonic creature, it wasn't a big deal to those with true strength. After all, in human society, there were people who captured and tamed eight-legged horses and sold them as commodities. Many influential nobles even treated eight-legged horses as a symbol of status. They would use eight-legged horses to pull carriages when they went out to show their nobility. Since they were reduced to a commodity, it was enough to prove that eight-legged horses were not powerful magical creatures. After a rough estimation, the eight-legged horse was equivalent to a silver or gold adventurer, equivalent to a second-grade magic caster, and the same level as Clem, around level 10. In front of a level 29 fine steel adventurer, unless there were tens of thousands of such monsters, they would not pose much of a threat. If that was the case, what was so strange about it being a little smoother? It wouldn't be strange if it was just a little smoother, but the problem is that it wasn't just a little smoother. It was too much, Noah said with a frown. Didn't you guys notice that when you were dealing with the eight-legged horses, these magical creatures didn't resist at all? They were just charging forward. Noah's words were like waking up a person from a dream, causing everyone present to be shocked. This time, even Haihagi's brows furrowed. "Indeed, I didn't see any resistance from the eight-legged horses. They were just charging forward. This is too abnormal, right?" Noah interrupted Abirua and exposed what he was thinking. It didn't look like they were charging at all. It looked more like they were running for their lives. Running for their lives. Ebirua, Gorglant, Tina, and Tio looked at each other. Running for their lives. The 8-legged horses were running for their lives. Why? Actually, Noah didn't say one thing. That was, the entire forest was too quiet. Logically speaking, since there were quite a few magical creature tribes here, it shouldn't be so eerily quiet. Unless something unusual had happened. Thinking of this, Noah turned his head and looked in the direction where the 8-legged horses had come from. If he wanted to know the answer to this, he would have to go and take a look. And so, Noah didn't hesitate and walked in the direction the 8-legged horses came from. Without any hesitation, Annabelle immediately followed behind Noah and moved forward together. Haggis and the others glanced at each other, then followed after him. In the end, they didn't walk for long. About 20 minutes later, Noah was the first to stop. He looked ahead with a hint of astonishment on his face. It wasn't just Noah. Even the group of fine steel adventurers who had followed them widened their eyes. This was because what appeared before them was an extremely abnormal scene. To be more precise, it was an open space that had been ravaged beyond recognition. The dense trees that were originally everywhere seemed to have been crushed by something, breaking apart and creating an empty space. The ground also seemed to have been crushed into powder and gravel, as if there was a huge monster that had gone on a rampage. What was even more horrifying was that there were traces of a strange liquid everywhere in such an open space. Some of the trees that had turned dark purple also had the same strange liquid on them. It made the trees seem as if they were burning, emitting black smoke and a pungent stench. What's going on? It stinks. Both Tina and T covered their noses with their arms. Ebirua and Gigrane's faces were tense. Because Ebirua was wearing a mask, no changes in her expression could be seen. However, one could still feel that her gaze was full of astonishment as she looked at the ravaged open space in front of her. Noah, on the other hand, noticed something else. Walking forward, Noah came to the front of a wreckage. It was as if it had been corroded or swallowed. Only less than half of its body was left. This is... Haggis followed behind Noah. She looked at the wreckage, and her eyes flickered. The corpse of an 8-legged horse. The rest of the people also looked down at the wreckage and stood there in a daze. It can't be. Ebirua said in a low voice. Apart from us, there are other fine steel adventurers who came here, right? A fine steel adventurer team. No one guessed that it was Mithril. No one guessed that it was orichalcum. Instead, they guessed that it was the highest grade, fine steel. This proved that Ebirua believed that the wreckage in front of them was not something that could be done by fine steel adventurers. In response, Ebirua slowly shook her head. Apart from us, there is only one other fine steel adventurer team in the kingdom, and I did not receive any news of them coming here. So... Gigrane said in a low voice. What's going on here? It's obvious that something came here and hunted the 8-legged horse. Noah glanced at the wreckage on the ground. Moreover, it's not an adventurer. Silence descended upon them. I have a bad feeling about this, Ebirua said, as if she wanted to express her thoughts on behalf of everyone else. Let's leave this place quickly. No one objected to Ebirua's words. Except for Noah. Leave. Noah chuckled and shook his head. He looked up and stared ahead as he uttered these words. How about we ask that big guy over there if he agrees? Chapter 12:01. For a moment, almost no one reacted to Noah's words. Of course, there was no need for them to react. Because, in the next moment, everyone trembled all over, as if they were covered by sticky air. Their necks stiffened, and they raised their heads to look forward. Roar! It was a sound that sounded like the growl of a huge beast. When such a sound rang out, but it echoed very clearly in the entire space, everyone present saw it. In front of them, in the depths of the forest, a huge shadow suddenly emerged, dragging a long tail behind it. As the ground trembled slightly, its body stretched out. Because it was still daytime, everyone's vision was not greatly limited. Therefore, almost at the instant that the huge black shadow appeared, many people were able to see the full appearance of that figure. It was precisely because of this that except for Noah and Annabelle, the rest of the people's bodies stiffened. It couldn't be helped. The monster that appeared in front of everyone was a little too shocking. What slowly emerged from the depths of the forest was a monster from head to toe. Its appearance was like a lizard, but also like a python. Its body was nearly 10 meters long, and it was holding an 8-legged horse with only one leg exposed to the outside in its mouth. Such a huge monster stretched out its huge head from the depths of the forest while casting its gaze on Noah's group. With the Hagis in the lead, Abirua, Gegland, Tina, Tia, and even Annabelle felt as if their bodies were frozen at this moment. Their bodies began to stiffen. "Retreat!" Noah shouted without hesitation. "Don't be stared at by its eyes." Noah's reminder finally made everyone present react. "Retreat!" Ihagis shouted. "Don't look at its eyes." After that, everyone turned their heads and rushed out without any hesitation in another direction, disappearing from the huge monster's sight. Roar! At the same time, the huge monster's pair of eyes burst out with a ferocious glint. It let out a loud roar and rushed toward Noah's group. Clap, 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 clap. In an instant, wherever the huge monster passed, the trees were smashed into pieces. Taking a closer look, the trees and ground that were hit by the huge monster were corroded by the viscous liquid that dripped down from the monster's body, emitting black smoke and a foul stench. Sensing the menacing behemoth behind him and the huge commotion, Gegland was the first to shout. "It's a huge basilisk. What kind of joke is this? Huge basilisk." Anyone who had a little knowledge of monsters would know the name of the huge basilisk. The reason was simple. That was a monster through and through. Its gaze had the effect of petrification. Its body fluid was a level of poison that could instantly kill people. Its scales and skin was comparable to the metal known as mithril. It was an extremely terrifying type among monsters, a huge monster that was above the level of fine steel adventurers. Finally, as Hagrid stretched out her hand, all of the magical waves condensed in her hand, causing a burst of soft light to surge in front of her palm. Magic abnormal state resistance strongest holy. In front of Hagrid's palm, a burst of soft light suddenly enveloped everyone present, causing the silhouettes of everyone present to flash with a pure white halo. At this very moment, the magic called Holy that Hagrid had launched was a 4th-rank magic that could grant others resistance to abnormal states. Whether it was petrification or poison, they were all abnormal states. Therefore, using this type of magic, especially one that was as high as the 4th grade, would basically be able to resist most abnormal statuses. Moreover, before launching Holy, Hagrid had also strengthened the ability to resist abnormal states of the Holy magic to the maximum. In this way, even if the huge basilisk's petrification ability and poison doubled, it wouldn't be a threat. "Watch me." Gigrain raised his spiked warhammer, and after a violent roar, shot out like a bullet, scuttling to the front of the huge basilisk that was heavily smashed on the ground. The spiked warhammer in his hand was like a windmill, swinging towards the huge basilisk's body. Clang! Along with a bell-like sound, Gigrain's spiked warhammer smashed a scale on the huge basilisk's body, but wasn't able to cause the slightest bit of damage to the huge basilisk. The huge basilisk immediately roared, its huge tail whipping out like a long whip, ferociously landing on Gigrain's body, who couldn't dodge in time. If this blow had landed solidly on Gigrain's body, even if he was equipped with the highest quality magic armor, he would still be unavoidably injured. However, before that, an inconceivable voice that sounded like a young girl, yet also like an old man, coldly shouted. Crystal barrier. A mirror-like barrier made entirely of crystal abruptly appeared amidst the spatial ripples, protecting Gorgelon within. Bang! The huge tail of the huge basilisk ferociously struck the crystal barrier, and under the huge force, the barrier was directly smashed apart. However, the terrifying blow of the huge basilisk was indeed blocked. Taking advantage of this time, Gigrain hurriedly withdrew his spiked warhammer, and withdrew. Roar! The huge basilisk let out an angry roar. Chapter 1202. Ew. An extremely loud and clear roar reverberated throughout the entire forest, causing the atmosphere and the entire space to be stirred up by the sound waves. Whistling sounds of wind breaking rang out one after another. The gigantic basilisk's tail carried terrifying power as it swept through the air like lightning, fiercely sweeping towards the retreating Gigrain. Don't look down on me. Seeing that the gigantic basilisk was actually chasing after him, Gigrain let out a furious roar. While maintaining his retreating momentum, he grabbed the spiked warhammer in his hand and swung it out like a windmill, fiercely colliding with the gigantic basilisk's tail. Bang! The collision between the warhammer and the basilisk's tail stirred up a shock wave. A gust of wind rushed over, numbing Gerland's arm as he held the warhammer. His entire body was sent flying backwards, smashing into the ground. He rolled a few times before stabilizing his body. He then leaped up and knelt on the ground with one knee, panting rapidly. As for the gigantic basilisk's tail, it paused for a moment in the collision. Some of the scales on it seemed to have cracked, but it wasn't damaged. The hardness of the gigantic basilisk's scales and skin was comparable to that of mithril. In this world, on the surface, only orichalcum and steel could be harder than the scales and skin of the gigantic basilisk. If one didn't have the power to shatter mithril, then one wouldn't be able to harm the gigantic basilisk at all. In addition, the gigantic basilisk's body would occasionally secrete highly toxic bodily fluids that could instantly kill. Its gaze also had the effect of petrification. It was truly the natural enemy of close combat. As expected, if I were to fight alone, I wouldn't be able to do anything to a monster like the gigantic basilisk. Gigrain roughly spat out a mouthful of saliva, but didn't forget to thank Ibilui. Thanks, Ibilui. You've been a great help just now. If it wasn't for Ibilui's crystal bulwark that helped Gigrain block the basilisk's attack, he would have been injured long ago. Of course, Gigrain's gauntlets were a magical tool that could recover the injuries and stamina of the target it touched. Even if Gigrain was injured, it would heal him. However, this kind of recovery couldn't be completed in an instant. Therefore, Abaru's crystal bulwark was a great help to Gigrain. But, if even you can't hurt that giant basilisk, then it's going to be very difficult for us to hurt it. Tina and T, who focus on one-hit kills but don't have high attack power, are even less of a match for them. Erbiel looked at Haggis. Leader, what should we do? All of a sudden, the elite steel adventurers of the Blue Rose Guild, including Ibilua, Gragland, Tina, and T, all turned their gazes to Hagrid, asking for instructions. Gigrain's attacks could only barely damage the scales of the giant basilisk. Tina and T didn't have very high attack power, so they could only provide support. Hagrid was a magic caster of the faith system. She was more like a priestess or a priest. Although she wasn't bad in direct combat, she was definitely not as good as Garland in terms of pure attack power. In other words, if they wanted to defeat the giant basilisk, in the Blue Rose Guild, only elemental sorcerer Ibilua, who focused on strengthening the attributes of crystal-type gemstones, could fight the giant basilisk. Judging from the current situation, the elite steel adventurers of the Blue Rose Guild would win in the end. However, not only would that take a lot of time, but it would also be accompanied by unpredictable dangers. Therefore, considering that they had other motives, fighting the giant basilisk was definitely not advisable. However, even if they knew that there was no benefit in this battle, what else could they do? Roar! The giant basilisk let out an earth-shattering roar. Its voice was full of violence, and its huge pair of blood-red eyes were like two huge red lanterns. With extreme violence and malice, it glared at Haggis and the others. Looking at the huge monster in front of them and feeling the terrifying malice on its body, Haggis didn't think that this giant basilisk would obediently let them go. With the strength and speed of the giant basilisk, unless Haggis and the others directly used fly or legend to leave this mountain range, it would be extremely difficult to escape from the mouth of the giant basilisk. At that moment, Haggis could only cast a pleading look at Noah. Noticing Haggis' pleading look, Noah couldn't help but smile bitterly. As expected, we still have to make a move against that disgusting monster. It was unknown whether or not it understood Noah's words, but the giant basilisk's violence and malice in its eyes increased exponentially. Roar! In the next second, an extremely ferocious roar rang out from the mouth of the giant basilisk. Immediately afterward, the giant basilisk suddenly bounced out like a spring. Against the whistling atmosphere, it rushed in the direction of Noah. Annabelle, who had been standing behind Noah, had a cold look in her eyes. Just as she was about to rush in front of Noah to protect him, Noah seemed to have guessed that Annabelle would do this and spoke softly. "You don't have to make a move." Annabelle almost reflexively stopped what she was doing. Noah, who didn't turn his head, looked at the giant basilisk's head that was gradually expanding in his field of vision, and his eyes were like an ancient well without ripples. So, the giant basilisk opened its stinky mouth in Noah's direction and shrouded Noah's body. Presumably, the giant basilisk wanted to swallow Noah whole, right? "Be careful!" Haggis and the others exclaimed one after another. However, Noah didn't seem to hear anything. He quietly watched the giant basilisk biting toward him, and an imperceptible light flashed in his dark and deep eyes. Just when the giant basilisk's bloody mouth was about to fall on Noah's body, golden ripples suddenly fluctuated out of the space like water waves, covering the entire space around the giant basilisk. Amidst the numerous water-like golden ripples, silver chains with wedges of different shapes and flowing with bright golden light slowly extended out. With a rise and fall, they shot out explosively. Immediately, the sound of chains colliding reverberated in the surroundings. Silver chains with resplendent golden light coiled back and forth around the huge basilisk, unceasingly streaking across the space. Finally, the huge basilisk was completely surrounded. Soon after, the chain tightened and bound the giant snake monster's body. Clang! The sound of steel colliding with steel resounded. That was the sound of the golden ripples explosively shooting out, binding the giant basilisk, and tearing the giant basilisk towards Noah's direction. Under everyone's gaze, the giant basilisk's incomparably scarlet mouth stopped less than 2 meters away from Noah, and couldn't move forward anymore. Roar! The giant basilisk let out a crazy roar, and used all its strength to struggle, causing the chains coiling around its body to emit intense clashing sounds. Unfortunately, no matter how the giant basilisk struggled, it couldn't break free from the shackles of the chains. After all, the heavenly lock, Enkidu, was a god-defying noble artifact. Although it was unable to exert the terrifying binding power that even gods could not break free from when used on a target without divinity, it was still a noble artifact. Even Akenalia, whose strength was comparable to the 5 great dragon kings, had to spend some time to break free from the heavenly lock, let alone this giant basilisk. Thus, amidst the frantically struggling giant basilisk's roar, Noah took a small step back, leaving that bloody mouth filled with the stench of blood. His brows were tightly knitted the entire time. "Although I'm not afraid of poison, I really don't want to come into contact with the disgusting body fluids of this snake." The mouths of the fine steel adventurers, led by Iguana, Elua, Gragland, Tina, and Tia, twitched slightly. If they were to face the giant basilisk, then the fine steel adventurers, Wild Rose Tsang, would have to fight with their lives on the line. How could they care about the disgusting body fluids? In contrast, Noah easily subdued the giant basilisk, and even captured it alive. He actually had the leisure to worry about coming into contact with its body fluids. Was the difference between them so obvious? Chapter 1203. Under the binding of the heavenly lock, Enkidu, the gigantic snake monster was like an ordinary snake that had its weak spot pinched. Even if it struggled with all its might and roared at the sky, causing the ground and atmosphere to tremble, it was still unable to move an inch. Seeing how the powerful and ferocious monster was unable to do anything to the silver chains that flowed with golden light, the group of fine steel adventurers led by Agagi were all curious. What kind of chains are those? Ibiliua asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Even a magical creature like the giant snake monster can't do anything to it. That chain is definitely comparable to those famous magical tools in the legends, right? Hearing this, Noah just shrugged and said this perfunctorily. No matter what grade of magical tool it is, as long as it works, it's a good magical tool. The group of fine steel adventurers rolled their eyes in unison. That was as good as not saying anything. So, what do we do now? Gigrain raised his spiked warhammer and asked eagerly. This big thing can't resist anymore. If we kill it here, it'll be a great achievement. After hearing Gigrain's words, the other fine steel adventurers were more or less moved. The main purpose of adventurers was to protect the safety of humans from all kinds of monsters. Therefore, the Adventurers Guild would make a corresponding reward system based on this. When dealing with monsters, even if they didn't accept a commission, the adventurers could still bring a part of the monster's body to the Adventurers Guild after the deed was done and receive a corresponding reward. And the amount of reward depended on the strength of the monster that was hunted. A demonic creature like the giant basilisk was a huge threat to an entire team of fine steel adventurers. If they hunted it, not only would they obtain a considerable amount of rewards, but their reputation would also increase by leaps and bounds. Of course, as the highest level of fine steel adventurers, Agagi and the others didn't care about the rewards and reputation. Eliminating the huge threat that was the basilisk was the most important thing. For most adventurers, exterminating monsters was just a job for them to make ends meet, but for ordinary residents, it could reduce their chances of encountering danger. There were all kinds of monsters in this mountain range, and it was certain that it would attract many adventurers. There might even be people like Noah and the others who needed to cross the mountain range to reach the other side. If the ordinary adventurers and humans encountered a monster like the basilisk that had the power to wipe out an entire group of fine steel adventurers, they would definitely die. If they couldn't deal with the basilisk, then for the sake of survival, Agagi and the others could only choose to escape and leave it behind. But now, the basilisk was immobilized because of Noah's noble artifact, and was nothing more than a target. As a result, Agagi and the others had their hearts had their minds. In response, Noah's might. No, let's just leave it here. Noah's and the others, and were. Seeing the puzzled look on Agagi's and the others' faces, Noah explained. There's no doubt that the reason why the forest is so strangely quiet after we entered this mountain range is definitely because of this basilisk. The nearby monster tribes have probably been eaten clean by this basilisk, right? As mentioned earlier, this mountain range wasn't a restricted area. The only truly powerful monsters here were the powerful undyings that Tina and T had mentioned. They might pose a threat to low-level adventurers, but they weren't much of a threat to high-level adventurers. As long as there was someone comparable to a mithril, even if they couldn't run rampant in this mountain range, they definitely wouldn't lose their lives for no reason. Under such circumstances, the monsters that lived here were naturally not difficult to deal with. However, a huge basilisk had appeared here. This gigantic basilisk could even threaten an entire team of fine steel adventurers. In this mountain range, it was undoubtedly the most terrifying king. If we let this giant basilisk continue to stay here, the magical creatures won't dare to come close. Even if they do, they will be gnawed by this giant basilisk until not even their bones are left, said Noah. So, if we let it continue to stay here, not only will it effectively eliminate the other monsters, but it will also ensure that the monsters won't come close. Whether it's for us who need to hurry and don't have the time to fight with the monsters or for others who need to pass through here, it's a good thing. Ibilui, Glenn, Tina, and Tia all came to a sudden realization. If that was the case, it wasn't wrong. Agagi was the only one who objected. Although this will reduce the threat of the other monsters, the basilisk itself is still a threat, isn't it? Only then did everyone come to their senses. Leader is right. Ibilui looked at Noah. Although it's a good thing to reduce the threat of the other monsters, the basilisk itself is a huge threat. It's even more of a threat than the normal monsters. If we let it stay here, it'll definitely be a threat to us. This isn't a problem either. Noah recalled the information he knew about the basilisk. Giant basilisk is a magical creature with a strong sense of territory. That's why this giant basilisk hunted down all the magical creatures around it. But at the same time, such a magical creature wouldn't leave its territory so easily. As long as we report to the Adventurers Guild, the people there should be able to use intelligence magic to find out the area where the giant basilisk is active. Then, if we prohibit others from entering this area, there shouldn't be a problem. After hearing Noah's explanation, everyone was relieved. If that's the case, then it won't be a problem. Agagi seemed to think that this was more feasible and nodded. Then, about the basilisk, we'll report to the Adventurers Guild when we get back. Then, are we going to retreat now? Ibilui pointed at the chains on the basilisk that was still struggling and roaring. Don't you want the chains? Yeah. Gigland quickly followed. Since you don't want to kill this big guy, then you can't untie the chains, right? Once it's untied, this big guy will go crazy again, won't it? If that's the case, you don't have to worry about it. Noah couldn't help but laugh. Let's just go. As for the chains, after we leave this place and run to a safe distance, it will naturally return to us. After all, Noah's Gate of Babylon had an automatic recovery function. After Noah left this place, he could remove the shackles of the Enkidu. The Gate of Babylon would retrieve the Enkidu. Therefore, there was no need to worry about this problem. Just like that, Noah and his party continued to walk into the depths of the forest amidst the berserk roars of the basilisk. Just as Noah predicted, due to the presence of the basilisk, most of the nearby magical creatures had either died or fled. There weren't many left. If not for the basilisk, Noah and his party would have had to deal with at least 4 or 5 waves of magical creatures. But because of the basilisk, Noah and his party only managed to deal with a wave of goblins and ogres that even the lowest level bronze and iron adventurers could deal with. The rest of the journey was much smoother. Only after they had walked a certain distance did the appearance of magical creatures become normal. This proved that Noah and his party had walked out of the basilisk's territory. And now, they weren't far from their destination. Under such circumstances, Noah and his party welcomed the arrival of darkness. Gigland, who was walking at the forefront and acting as the vanguard, glanced at the darkening sky, turned his head, and shouted to Noah and Hagrid. It's dark, shouldn't we stop? Hagrid looked at Noah and waited for Noah to nod in agreement before speaking. Then, let's set up camp nearby. Everyone nodded in agreement. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.